Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Valletta Tech Summit. We're so excited to have you back with us, and we're going to carry on with our panel discussions this afternoon. Our first panel discussion coming up in just a moment is IoT and connectivity. Before we get there, let's meet our panelists. So, thank you very much for being with us. We've got Victor and Robert and Kenneth in the studio. We're being joined online by Linda, Simon and Howard. And my first question, to put you on the spot, Victor, is for you. You've joined us here from Go PLC. So my first question is, we're talking about connectivity and Internet of Things. Just to remind ourselves, how is data being utilized to inform business decisions in real life?
Very good. So data is at the heart of any IoT solution. So whenever we speak about IoT solutions, devices that track assets or monitoring sensors that are monitoring processes, we are always talking about capturing data. And this data is then being transmitted through the connectivity layer to an IoT platform where it is analyzed, it is interpreted, we get insights out of that data, and that data and information and insights are then available to business leaders to take decisions, to improve their processes, to monitor how the business is operating. And through the various IoT solutions that we can see around us, we can see plenty of examples, like for example, building management solutions, where you can monitor energy consumption in offices, decisions.
I'm going to ask you for a second to elaborate on those solutions that you just mentioned, though, because you mentioned construction, you mentioned a number of other areas. But I want to know more about that. So to put that into kind of real terms so that we can understand, what do you actually mean about these end-to-end solutions based on data?
For example, let's take an example of asset tracking. At Go, we have recently launched a solution about asset tracking. So basically, many businesses have assets, valuable assets, that are deployed on the field. And these assets, unless you have somebody that is physically monitoring them, you wouldn't know where they are or how they are performing. And also they are subject to theft. So if you leave them, for example, at night, nobody is monitoring these assets. So through a simple tracker attached to the asset, you can immediately know through an IoT platform, an IoT solution, where that asset is located, how that asset is being utilized, for example. If it is lost, you can increase the possibility of recovering that asset. Therefore, you are reducing the disruption to the business. You can also look at how you can optimize the utilization of that asset. And like that, we can see how data from a device, basically a tracker, it is helping businesses to improve their operational efficiencies.
So an asset could be a vehicle, it could be, I don't know, a piece of equipment.
A piece of equipment on a construction site. So many times when we speak about IoT, especially locally, we always think about vehicle tracking. And it is a very important segment. In fact, we as a provider of connectivity services, we power a number of solutions locally. But there is much more than just vehicle tracking. So we can technically monitor anything, any asset which is out there.
You just mentioned about vehicles. I'm curious to find out how far this is implemented so far with vehicles in Malta, but also give me an for instance, about what these other assets are, because I'm being a bit blonde, but I want you to tell me. I did tell you I'll ask the blonde questions.
Sure. So let me give you an example. For example, recently we had one of our clients that they have raw material, used in the production, and this raw material was being stolen, some of this raw material. So they wanted to track this raw material, and they basically placed an asset tracker on these containers, so to speak. And through the tracking, they managed to understand the patterns where this raw material was being displaced, or actually in certain instances even stolen. So, the IoT solution provides real information to the business owners, to the managers, decision makers, and before we're also talking about vehicle tracking. Route optimization, fuel monitoring, these are all real live variables that you can monitor to improve and optimize your business.
So is this where the trends are lying at the moment? Is this, if you were to analyze, where are the trends in IoT and, as you mentioned, business and benefiting business, are these kind of trends that we're talking about?
Yes, and we are also seeing different perspectives when it comes to how businesses are looking at implementing IoT in their business. So on the one hand, you have ad hoc solutions. So a business would engage with an integrator to create ad hoc solutions, and that is very well. But that presents also certain challenges for certain small businesses, for example, that they don't have the necessary skills or resources. So we see a trend whereby more and more businesses and more providers are offering end-to-end solutions rather than just ad hoc solutions, so off-the-shelf solutions. We are also seeing an increased trend from clients that they always ask about security. As we know, it is a very important subject about security, especially when you have hundreds of devices and they can be easily sort of hacked. So security is one of the most important elements that we are seeing clients asking about, and ensuring that all their information systems, all their platforms are highly secured. We are also seeing a model where many providers, including ourselves, are offering service as a software. Software as a service, whereby you reduce the initial costs of deploying IoT, so reducing the barriers of entry, by offering a solution on a monthly subscription. So like that, you are improving the time to market and also reducing the entry barriers for smaller businesses, especially that might not be in a position to invest heavily upfront for an IoT solution. So there are various trends, and the market is continuously evolving.
This is what we've been hearing so far, that the market is not static, it's evolving all the time. I'm going to be coming back to you with more questions in just a moment, but thank you very much, Victor. I'm coming next to Robert, who is joining us from AIVHY. You're actually the founder of this company. How do you assist clients to obtain small, achievable steps? What about scalability? Because even for me, talking this morning and listening to you, Victor, talking, these are big steps, big things to achieve. And initially, this might be quite frightening.
Yeah, actually that's a very good point, because a lot of innovation sounds like big steps, very expensive steps, but in reality it should be much more achievable, and it should be affordable, right? So we developed a method where we're helping clients to first, of course, we need to create awareness under the people that are working there, and actually all layers of the organization. We need to make sure that the people who are on the production floor need to understand why you want to innovate, but also the managers and the high C-level people. So and as soon as we created some awareness and people understand the reason why and how everyone should benefit, then we will have a look where they are standing today, like how is the organization working, how their processes are working, what kind of technology they are using. So as soon as we know where they're standing today, we will use our expertise in technology and about what we know it's possible to find out where low-hanging fruits are, like what small investments can they make today to actually make a difference in the short term. So then we will set a vision together with the client, because of course it will be a future vision for the client, and you need to be very involved in vision making here. So and as soon as vision is set, it becomes possible to build a roadmap where we define very small achievable steps that require small investments with all a good return investment to make the steps towards the future vision. And here it's very crucial that these steps should be achievable, make good return, but also every step should lay the foundation for the next step. Right? Because this is absolutely crucial. As you want, in the future, we want to start connecting everything with everything, all devices, all the layers of the organization. You want perhaps even connect with partners along the supply chain. So you're really building to something much bigger, and you only can achieve this when the steps are building to this goal and every time contributing to this future goal and vision.
I'm going to ask you in a second about dealing with legacy systems. Before I get there, you mentioned vision.
Yeah.
So is the vision always everything? Is it always the vision to have every single solution in place? Or would you be talking to a client about, well, actually, let's look at getting here first, see how you perform, and then going on to the next step?
Okay, well, actually, that's a very interesting question because not always, depends on the situation, but typically they might be a bit easier in the way how they are working and how they're engineered. So it's easier to understand maybe the potential of them, and sometimes they even have bigger opportunities for improvement. And investing some energy to create value from older machines, it will also allow you to build knowledge which can be reinvested in the new. As soon as you replace these machines, the knowledge you already have, so you can specify better machines to replace these older ones. So it is very beneficial to also include older machines and legacy machines in your strategy.
Okay, so there's not just a one solution, throw everything out the window.
Exactly.
You can integrate everything into a moving forward and achieving that vision, even when the goalposts change.
Exactly.
Let's talk about security. We had a conversation before we came to talk about security and about data and how secure that data is and how it's being used.
Yep.
Now we're talking today about, in this panel discussion, about IoT and connectivity. How secure is that data with regards to connectivity? What should we be worried? We had this discussion. I was immediately hugely alarmed. But should we be worried about security and connectivity?
Well, alarmed, I think it's very important that people are aware about the risks, because we have, well, for example, older, newer machines. We have a lot of assets, and we start to connect them. But maybe they were not designed initially to be connected, meaning they were not designed to be cyber secure because they were not connected to anything. And we need to keep this in mind very strongly. So if we set a roadmap, we need to make sure that cybersecurity is by design embedded into this roadmap. Otherwise, you will have a very expensive problem coming up, and fixing it afterwards, coming up with a cybersecure solution after you started the road, basically, then it will become very complex and expensive. So from the start is the key here.
So I'm going to ask another question in similar vein to me asking Victor a bit of a blonde question, but what is the threat of not having a cyber secure system? What, for me or for anybody else who's running a business, what could that be? What could that look like?
Yeah, okay. It of course depends a lot on what kind of business you're running, right? Of course data leaking might be a problem, but if you're running machines, well, typically bigger machines, they are very strong, powerful, moving fast. They need to be safe, right? So embedding IoT connectivity might reduce the safety of these machines, or even they can be hacked, right? There are a lot of different things which can happen, so data loss, hacking with a lot of different results from there. So you need to understand the risks that you are facing as soon as you start connecting them, and you need to choose the right approach in order to avoid them. And sometimes risks are acceptable for some companies, which are not acceptable for other companies. Right, so it's very important that you know from the start what risks you're going to face and make sure you address them along the way continuously.
And throughout this conversation so far, you've both addressed the fact that this is not a one-size-fits-all, this is bespoke, this is tailoring for a business-specific need. So that brings me to you, Kenneth. Thank you so much for being here from Melita. Listen, we've talked about different types of business solutions. I want to talk about types of connectivity in relation to IoT. There's lots of conversation about this, lots of buzzwords, but what are the kind of connectivities that we can talk about?
Look, from a connectivity perspective, it is a key component to an IoT solution. So basically, Victor spoke about the data and the application layer, whilst Robert talked about the equipment and the devices. I like to explain it as it's as easy as ABCD. So basically you have your application in the big data layer. At the bottom you have your devices, which are basically reading the data. But between these two there needs to be a connectivity layer, so basically there is transfer of information, and then you can have a whole solution. And this is how I try to explain it so that people can understand, in a very simple way.
Thank you.
Not for a blown moment, okay? Okay. So it is a key component. However, I think one key element to understand in the IoT side is that there are different use cases And for different and specific use cases, you need different type of connectivity solutions. So let's have basically like a scale. So we're used to like 2G, 3G, and 4G. These are words that are known. Most of the use cases that we have around today, like vehicle tracking and others, can work and still work and can continue to work with the 2G, 3G, and 4G type of connectivity. However, there are use cases whereby an IoT solution needs to cover usually a couple of areas. One is the efficiency, which means efficient battery life. And then there's also situations whereby you need to reach deep down, underwater, below concrete, whereby what you're trying to monitor and read data from is not at street level. So basically there come handy different types of solutions in the connectivity area. Typically it's called narrowband IoT, which is like 2G, 3G, 4G, but specifically for IoT use cases. And what does narrowband IoT give you? It will give you a deep penetration. So basically the signal goes deep down, even 3 meters of concrete below surface. So basically it can reach there. The way the network is designed so that a device which works on battery can work with one charge up to 10 years of battery life. So basically you charge it once, it's there in the field, and basically it gives you 10 years of use. And how that happens is that because the way the network works is that the device goes to sleep and basically comes back to life only when it needs to send that particular piece of data so that you can read it. So this is another type of connectivity solution. Then obviously there's the new buzz, which is 5G. And I know that one of our colleagues will talk about 5G eventually, so I don't want to steal her, basically her win. But 5G is very, very important when it comes to solutions where you need very, very low latency. So basically the response between the devices or the machines, you need it very, very, very quick. Okay. Apart from that, there are other solutions, typically like LoRaWAN, which is not a typical mobile connectivity solution, but it's another type of connection which has its own advantages because it can be deployed very quickly. It can be deployed in a much more costly manner than with other solutions. But obviously each solution has its own pros and cons, depending.
I'm going to stop you there because as someone who can't get their mobile to work in the bathroom and the battery never runs, it lasts until the end of the day, that solution that you're talking about that goes 3 meters through the concrete, I'm in for that. But in fairness and in seriousness, can you give me some real life scenarios of where these, you mentioned about 5G, about this fast network, but these other solutions that you talked about, so where would they apply? Because they're not applicable to every scenario.
They're not applicable to every scenario, and sometimes you have a mix of both in order to give you a full solution. So let me give you an interesting one because it's a subject which is coffee. Okay, coffee is a subject which is favorite with many. So the coffee industry typically works in a way whereby the manufacturer gives you a free industrial coffee machine and basically with the promise that you're going to buy their own coffee brand and maintain that machine according to the maintenance agreement that you sign. So most of these coffee machines that are out there are analog. They were not digitized as you had, and if you start doing more coffees than you actually bought, they know immediately that you're using another brand's coffee. Okay? So so basically they can monitor their brand, if it's being used, if it's another one's coffee is being used, and obviously manage that client relationship like that. This type of solution has LoRaWAN sensors inbuilt in the machine so that they communicate internally very quick and easy to install. But then they will transfer that data over mobile technology, let's say with a 4G SIM card within the router, and which basically then the IoT solution will receive it, the IoT platform, and then you can read the data. More than that, which was very interesting to see how actually it evolves, how businesses are evolving rather than doing just the basic, is that these guys managed also to transform this machine that they can switch it remotely. So if you have, let's say, a restaurant or a hotel who basically have a 90-day payment notice, and basically the 90-day passed, you give them the first notice, another 30 days, and they haven't paid, they can actually switch off that machine remotely, and basically it stops your business, meaning you have to pay because if not, the business is out.
Kenneth, this is coffee police.
So these are things that are coming through. So this thought process, it's always innovation. The area is so innovative that we were talking about as we're always learning. They say that we're the experts. We're the experts until what we know. But there's so many things that are happening. So connectivity is a key component to all this to happen. And what you find is a lot of collaboration between the data entities, the machinery entities, and the connectivity solution providers, so that together they collaborate in order to be able to give a one-stop solution and the one-stop to the clients.
And a one-stop solution that's tailored specifically to their needs. It's very, very exciting. Now, you just mentioned back there the Netherlands. So is this something that you at Melita are doing more often, working with companies outside of Malta, or is it Malta-specific?
No, basically, as Melita, we're a local provider, and obviously we invest a lot in Malta. But definitely, IoT gives you the ability to move offshore without the barriers of a small country. And what we've done is that our SIM card can roam on all the roaming agreements that we have, and basically with one SIM card, you can basically deploy the service wherever you are in Europe and globally. And this is what we're doing. Okay, so we've deployed a number of solutions with partners using our own connectivity, roaming in Europe and beyond. Apart from that, as I said, we're building a LoRa network here in Malta, but we also have an entity in Germany and building a LoRaWAN network in Germany because Germany is not well served within the LoRa community side. And why LoRa is very important in many aspects is that it covers quite a good set of use cases. And when it comes to the cost, usually there's, for example, just to give an idea, a normal sensor would cost $30, $40 less if it's a LoRa-based sensor as opposed to a 3G, 4G, NB-IoT type of sensor. Obviously, as long as that connectivity solution is right for that, because cost is only one part of your consideration. But if you take 10,000 sensors and you're saving 30 euros on 10,000 sensors, that's a lot of money. You know? So cost will always come into play when it comes to deciding what and how to deploy IoT solutions.
I have no doubt. Gentlemen, I'm going to keep you here. Don't go anywhere. But we are going to connect to Howard, who's joining us from ST Microelectronics. Howard, I can see you're there. Thank you so much for being with us. We're going to carry on this conversation. I can also see that I'm joined by Linda as well and Simon. Thank you. You've joined us remotely. But we're going to be having this conversation as one panel. Howard, what is the connection between smart transportation, IoT, and connectivity, and how do these relate? So we're slightly changing the topic for a moment, but we're talking about now transportation, IoT, and connectivity.
So for me, maybe I explain a little bit on ST context locally in Malta. So what we are doing in the smart transport arena is actually to do what we call the AGV and ARVs, automated robotics transportation system, and also guided vehicle system. So what it means in terms of there will be the different layers my colleague mentioned before, the ABCD. The robots are somehow, or cobots are somehow being connected with all the infrastructure. So there's a brain, you call it AI or real-time dispatch. They decide what lots run at which machine. And of course, all the location is predefined where they need to drop. So you can imagine that you need to transport a lot or a material to be processed in a machine. So the brain will say, okay, I need this lot to go to this machine, this lot to go to this machine, and the signals is being sent through this IoT. They need to know whether the machine is ready to pick it up or not, because the machine need to be in a ready state. And besides the ready state, and then they say, yes, I'm ready to take it up. Then you need to send the robot there to pick up the lot. And you also have to be connected, because it's not only a lot that is randomly placed on the table or on the floor. You have to be also know exactly which position, which place is in. Yeah? Let's say in a stocker. So you have to retrieve it through the material system, and then you take the lot, you go to the Dexnamer path. Also remember, you have all these robots moving in the factory, and in the factory, there's also human, yeah? The operators, the technician, they are working together with these cobots. So these transportation also have to sense in the environment, is there any danger? Someone blocking it, some of the tools or something is in the way, so you have to stop. So there's also a sensory of these robots with the environment, and to understand, to interact, what are the things they need to do. And these are how I see that it's a bit similar to what fellow panelists mentioned about. All these have to come together. It's sometimes not so easy to do. It's a bit complex, because it's not only a simple dispatching. Dispatching is that.
Thank you, Howard. I'm just going to go back to something you just said a minute ago. You mentioned about these smart systems integrating with humans. And of course, one of the things that we've been exploring today is that a lot of the roles of humans are going to be replaced, and they're not needed. We talked about this in the previous panel discussion. But is there still a relationship between the smart systems that you're talking to, the IoT systems that you're talking to, particularly in the context of a factory, where there are still roles that will need to be managed and maintained by humans, by human interaction?
For this part, I wouldn't say that humans are replaced by robots. Yeah, there's a fine line and art where we talk about Industrial 4.0. Yes, it's always the bell and whistles of the latest, sexiest technology available in the market. But what is important in the core is that the humans are being upskilled. That means their value. I'm an industrial engineer, so I would say that we have to maximize the value add of the human. Yeah, so pushing a trolley from point A to point B is no value add or low value add. You need to get the material from point A to point B. But a person going there, pushing, it doesn't give too much of value. This is where we dedicate the task to the robots to help us with. You have things to load and load, heavy stuff, repetitive, it can be done by robots. That's where we deploy these robots to help us. And for the human, they actually do more value-added tasks. So they are more of their time. Instead of spending maybe 50% of time on this kind of manual tasks, they spend the other part of 50% of time on the more value-added tasks. And you can actually upskill the people. They can maintain the system. They can say how to improve the algorithm in order for this situation to optimize further. Maybe it's a change of layout, maybe a change of design of certain things. Maybe there's some opportunity they see on the floor where they can actually do some Kaizen activities to make improvement. So IoT connectivity basically gave us the ability to leapfrog in terms of efficiency and productivity. Yes, there will be initial cost investment, but this is always with ROI. We must understand where is the true value that the people need to be employed, and where is the value that when we invest, maybe it's one-time investment, but you will do the payback in the time to come. So that is the balance that we have to strike, whether it's a one-time big bang. For our company, we are also pushing very aggressively with this future insight, which is what we call the Industrial 4.0. But there is also exists, opportunity to do small incremental step. So depending on each company's strategy and also the buy-in from the management.
love what you just said there, Howard, about upscaling humans and moving humans away from pushing trolleys to upscale their potential. I love that. What a great way of putting it. Thank you very much indeed. Howard, we're going to come back to you, I'm sure, in a few minutes.
Sure.
But right now I'm going to come to Simon from Hands On. Now, before I ask you your first question, Simon, can you just put it in a little bit of context as to what you do at Hands On?
Okay, basically, my position within the company is quite a tough one because I handle the commercial aspects of all different technologies, doing also research and development, and obviously finding out new technologies and which technologies can be implemented. And in today's world, it's quite tough because in the technology world, everything is changing, everything is improving, it's moving too fast, but at the same time, you have to be always on the alert to be able to give solutions to business clients and also end customers to meet their expectations.
What's your biggest challenge today when it comes to IoT, or are there other challenges that you're facing as well?
Well, if we were to put in IoT as a context, what are the main components of IoT? Breaking them into three parts, you've got the hardware aspect, you've got the connectivity, and at the end, you need a platform to be able to know what's going on. If we were to start with component per component, going in and discussing on the actual hardware, today it's a big challenge finding the correct raw materials, being able to manufacture on time, and also the price is a big struggle because everything at this moment in time, everything is being very rare to find. The main raw materials are difficult to maintain, and everything is rising, and trying to keep within the moderate pricing is one of the biggest challenges. Going into connectivity, as my colleagues were also mentioning before, there are different types of connectivities. Each connectivity has its own challenge, meaning that at times you have to have a mix of connectivities, because when you're talking about, if we were to go to wireless connectivity, working on frequencies, talking about frequencies, me as a telecommunication engineer, my life is frequencies, and trust me, it is not easy as one might think. Especially that certain frequencies might work in one environment, but might not work in the same environment in a different area where for example, there are buildings. Buildings within Malta are having quite thick walls. In different countries, it might be simpler or even much more difficult to be able to transfer the information from the device to the platform. So that means that if there is one part which fails,
And you sound as if you're having a lot of challenges at the moment. I feel like I just need to come and give you a hug. Simon, look, you mentioned back there COVID, you mentioned the war, and you also mentioned a moment ago about it being more difficult to find the resources and materials that you need. Are those the things that are connected? Is that what is influencing the challenges that you're facing at the moment, getting the materials and the components? Is that down to COVID? Is that down to, unfortunately, now the war that we're seeing as well?
Yes, it seems that everything is connected. For example, a simple component might literally hold the whole production line. And that's a very big headache. And well, people may blame COVID, some may also blame the war. During these times, some factories also managed to literally get hold of all the semiconductors, and I'm pretty sure that Howard knows what I'm saying here. That some factories, some suppliers, some very strong factories managed to capture and get hold of most of the semiconductor material, which basically is the core part of components which make the whole system functioning. And yes, due to all these issues, it's a chain reaction. It's basically a chain reaction. Everything is connected to each other. Each country is connected to each other. So when a country or a supplier or a manufacturer gets stuck into something, most probably, especially if it's a core producer, most probably the whole chain will get stuck and one will start blaming the other.
I'm sure, and I'm sure you're facing challenges. And as I said, Simon, you know, I can see that you have identified some challenges that are facing the industry at the moment. But I want to end on a positive note, because I know that you can find ways around these challenges. And everybody who's been on the panel so far has talked about bespoking the solution to your needs. So coming back to that and to a positive outlook, what should I be taking into consideration before I choose an IoT device from hands-on? What are the considerations that I need? You mentioned it earlier on about connectivity. You mentioned about the components. What are we looking at here?
Well, the most important is before you implement an IoT system within your entity, your consumer, it's doing your research. Basically, when we say research, it's not, you don't need to be a scientist to do certain things, but it's very important to meet your expectations is, first of all, identify what type of accuracy are you looking at? Because accuracy, the percentage of accuracy might also determine the actual price of the product, the availability of the product. And people within this panel, also colleagues of ours who are also at your premises from the network connectivity side, most of the time we also meet up and see how we are able to combine our efforts to meet certain expectations. Not everyone has the network available, but each and every one of us try and fight these issues, and most of the time we succeed. And sometimes clients think it's impossible, but nowadays technology has taught us that nothing is impossible unless we sit down, think, and find a solution. We believe that there are solutions for many things. Let's not say that there is a solution for everything, but there are many solutions that if we sit down together and try and go and understand certain hurdles and aspects, we believe that you can have a mix. For example, if you've got a solution with what works with Wi-Fi, GSM, LoRaWAN, NB-IoT, 3G, 4G, and not each and every connectivity is available everywhere. You can have a mix of devices, and then it all depends on the integrator, which, for example, Hands-On Systems does this job. We combine our efforts, find all the equipment, meet up the network providers, and together we integrate these solutions, these systems, to be able to display everything on one platform and make our customers and our consumers' life much easier. Today, in today's world, we know that the human aspect of things, having everything automated, everything in a more reliable manner, and that is what we do. We combine these technologies and then put them on a platform which are also maintained to give an automated alert. For example, if it comes to refrigeration, if it comes to environment monitoring, asset tracking, vehicle tracking, everything combined makes the people's life easier. Today we are living a very fast life, and at times it's very difficult, and also human resources is also very difficult to find.
Tell us about IoT over 5G tests. Oh, we need a bit of sound from you, Linda.
Now, can you hear me?
There you go.
Fantastic, thank you. And my life is actually quite easy because my colleagues here, they have talked so much and inspired everyone. So I just have a very easy job to talk about 5G. But As you said, 5G is a buzzword, and currently it's being rolled out in the Nordics, where we operate with our own network. And just briefly to mention, Tele2 is a full service provider in the Nordic Baltics, but we also provide global IoT connectivity with roaming, which means that we have customers in Malta that are using our subscriptions and so on. And roaming works in most countries except countries like Turkey, Canada, and Brazil and stuff that don't allow it. But otherwise, that's what we are doing. In terms of the 5G tests so far, we are mainly focusing on looking at 5G on our own market where we have our own network, because as we know, it's we talk about low latency, which is like a good thing with 5G. It's latency, but you said from the A to the D, no, from the D to the A and the D back, if we are talking about the ABCD in the beginning, which means that it's not only the mobile network, which is part of the delay chain. There's also other systems, and it has to go through perhaps over the internet and stuff to a cloud solution and back. But so we're focusing right now on 5G and trying to do tests, because we want to find out, as we heard from the factories, autonomous vehicles and things like that, what requirements are you actually putting on the mobile networks? Because I think something we discussed when we prepared for this is that it's good to be aware that it's something called uplink, sending data up and sending data down. It's like it's like going two ways on a road. And most mobile networks in the world are really optimized for having a good experience down to your phone, like if you're streaming movies and so on your phone. So that is how you have put the capacity and dimension the network. But for many of these 5G use cases, like we talked about in the factory, when you have autonomous vehicles, we're doing tests with when you have cameras in all the directions and you're sending up data streams, video streams in order to remotely control it, then you want to have more of the capacity upwards. That's more the IoT use, is more sending data from a device upwards than sending down data, even if you can do upgrades and so on. So we're trying to learn and see with our customers how this will, the requirements will look like, and then also to see how we can impact, because we should all be aware of that the mobile networks of Europe and the world, it's consumer networks. The main user is the consumer, right? So we have to see how we can influence them in order to be optimized also to cater for the future 5G IoT cases. And then also what we have, if we go into the factories, we are also, I don't know exactly the situation in Malta, but in Sweden now 3.7 gigahertz is assigned only for enterprises, which means operators cannot buy these frequencies, which means the customers can build their own small private networks in 4G, 5G. And that is applicable for factories, for perhaps big warehouses and so on, where you really need to have a very stable, full control network. Because if you are operating on the macro network, you will always be part of influenced by other users. And if you're using Wi-Fi, you will be on unlicensed frequencies, which means that you cannot have full security either. So this is like a way, I think, for the authorities in the EU to enable enterprises that really develop businesses that are very, very relying on wireless, stable, predictable, and secure connectivity. Then they build their own small 4G, 5G networks, and we help them to do that. So that is, so far, we haven't really seen any the big challenge is to find devices on the right frequencies, actually. But I mean, it's very fairly new. The licenses have been just started to be given out in Sweden in January this year. So I think 20 enterprises have applied, and we're doing 2 tests. I tried to find out the information about Malta, about private networks, but I unfortunately couldn't find really the reliable information. But I'm sure any really key element in making it happen. Because in Also, it has to do with legislation. We're doing some with some small delivery robots. And then the Swedish legislation says that if anything happens, it has to be an opportunity for somebody from a center, operation center, to take over control. It's a little bit like with airplanes. I mean, the airplanes fly autonomously most of the time, but then the pilot at some certain time, it takes over control. So you need to enable someone else to take over control in order to fulfill the legal requirements in many countries.
Brilliant. Thank you for putting that in context. I appreciate. I have one last question that's come in from our viewers, and I'm going to just open this up to anybody who would be able to answer. The question is, what is the view for the next years about semiconductors manufacturing in EU? Do you still have to be dependent of Asia? Ideas and concepts are good. And this goes back to what you were saying, Simon, and you were saying as well here in the room. But if we do not have the stocks and resources, it's an infinite circle. Anybody want to answer that question?
I think Howard would be
Howard, it's over to you.
I will answer a little bit. Basically, for us, I think semiconductor, we make quite a ton of it inside Malta itself. Yeah. So of course, Malta is also not a huge country. We are also contributing a lot of chips into the automotive industry. Yeah, Malta being one of the leading producer also for the backend, at least for ST Malta, in the ST global community. So the complexity of this chip availability stems from the front end and also the back end. And if you look at the whole global scale, the biggest manufacturer is in Asia. Of course, we have some footprints of front end manufacturing in Europe as well. So I would say that we are trying our best to get the chips to your hands, and trust us. Yeah, we are actually. If you look at the ST results, we have been producing a lot of chips over the last few years, to meet the demand, and we are continuing to expand the capacity, and hopefully, to help the industry to grow, and also for the IoT to be successful. So, and a lot of our chips go into the automotive vehicles as well, the smart transport, where I think Linda mentioned about the sensory of the environment, the LiDAR system, whether there's people, it's not only the fixed things that you look at the traffic light and whether there's a car next to you. There's a dog that runs across the road. There are kids that have a ball rolling across the road. These are the sensors that you need to have in order for the car to drive on its own. Think about it in 5 years, 10 years time. Maybe you may not need a driver. You just call a cab. The cab will just come without a driver, and you are probably okay. You just sit there, and it'll just take you to the airport to any place. But as Malta Road, I also know sometimes the road can be bumpy also. So they have to sense and avoid a little bit, and sometimes the lanes are not so clear too. So how do you understand? And when there's a construction, how you know? So there's a lot of sensors, and all this you need a lot of electronics. If you look at the number of sensors you need to have in a new car, that is more autonomous and also more smart, in a sense, you have many times more the chips than what the traditional car you have. So we're trying our best,
Thank you very much indeed, Howard, for that answer. That was very diplomatic as well. But thank you. You put a smile on our face. So I want to thank all the panelists. I want to thank Linda. I want to thank Simon, Howard, and also here Victor, Robert, and Kenneth for being with us to talk about connectivity and IoT. Thank you very much indeed to each of you. We're going to take a very short break. We'll be back in just a few minutes. We're going to be picking up with IoT and security.
The Internet of Things plays a critical